If you want the most performance for as little money as possible, then look no further than the POCO X6 Pro. And to show you just how good it is in real life, we're going through a series of gaming tests to see how it performs, and spoiler alert, it is amazing. Let's get into it. Selamat pagi, good morning everyone, Kenneth here and welcome to my POCO X6 Pro review. Actually, I didn't get one from POCO, just my friend is so kind to let me review it first. As always, you can help me out by using the affiliate link below so I can review more stuff in the future. And also, you're getting my own honest opinion always, or else there's no point. And yeah, I call this a gaming review, but we're also going to talk about the camera and other stuff at the end, so stay tuned. And it's actually a pretty great phone in those regards as well. But let's get started with what's in the box real quick. Alright, so by standard this year, POCO and Xiaomi phones have generally included the same matte black case, which is still a great change compared to the transparent yellowing thing we have before. And also there's no change to the charging capabilities here. The 67 watt system does 40% in 10 minutes and full charge around 40 minutes. But again, as usual from Xiaomi, you still have USB-A port on the charger side, and the phone does get a little bit warm. We're talking boost mode's number here around like 43-45 degrees. Otherwise, the highlight feature here is going to be the 1.5K display that's slightly sharper than 1080p. It's also got 120Hz refresh rate. It supports HDR10 Plus and Dolby Vision, and it goes up to 1800 nits, which is quite crazy for this price. I mean, there's so much change for just $100 more than the M6 Pro I reviewed. Also standard this year, the in-screen fingerprint sensor works great, making it already a much more appealing phone than last year's X5 Pro. But what makes it scream crazy is the Dimensity 8300 Ultra inside. This chip flies, and I'm gonna say it outright, we're getting flagship level performance, especially for daily apps, but we're not here for mundane tasks, right? We're here for pushing the phone to its limits. So let's jump straight to the synthetic benchmarks, and we'll talk about the games right after. Starting with Geekbench 6, mine tested a touch over 1000 on single core and 3700 on multi-core. And to give you a perspective, we are not winning any awards here, but it doesn't have to. Remember, this is a $300 phone. And if we're getting similar performance to the overheating mess of Snapdragon 888 or 8 Gen 1 without the overheating, of course, as we'll see in the gaming test later, I think this is a huge win. Heck, it's a breakthrough even in this price range, because just a few years back, we have to sacrifice so much of the phone, like a worse plastic design and an LED screen instead of AMOLED. And this is the POCO X4 GT. I still like it because it just packs a ton of performance. But then skip forward to today, we got an even better chip, miles better camera and screen, and for the same price now. Anyways, for Antutu, we got over 1.3 million, and on the harder Solar Bay test on 3D Mark, we got over 3,200 score. Basically, unlike Geekbench, these actually show that the phone is better than the flagship 8 Gen 1 without the overheating. But enough of that, hit the thumbs up if you're excited, and let's get straight to the first game I've tested, Mobile Legends. First of all, I didn't have a great game when I recorded, so please forgive the clips here. But basically, throughout the 20 minutes gameplay, the game set to all ultra for graphics and frame rate, had a locked 120 FPS performance throughout. No significant dips whatsoever, as you can see from all the green bars in the performance monitoring overlay. And the phone went from 35.6 degrees Celsius to 40.5 degrees within 20 minutes. So it's a slowly rise, and it's not that hot at the end of the day. The room is also not too cold, it's just 27 degrees Celsius. And if I play with the same setting on my POCO F4 GT with 8 Gen 1 before, it could drop during fights, the temperatures would be a bit warmer at 42-43 degrees, and to get both better performance and temperature for less price is really more than anything I could ever ask. And also, not to forget, the battery only drops 7% from the whole 20-minute session, which is quite efficient for a game that maxes out the refresh rate of the screen itself. Now moving on to Genshin Impact, here we're trying to really push the phone to its limits with the highest preset and frame rate set to 60 FPS. This is a setting that's quite unimaginable unless you're playing with cooler fans back in the day. But with the X6 Pro, just as it is, we actually get around 50 FPS when exploring the map and doing daily quests fighting enemies, we can see constant dips to the low 40s, which is still quite playable in my opinion, but then when farming in a domain, the enclosed space means we're back to almost 50-60 FPS. Still though, the dips are unavoidable unless you're playing on high or medium setting that might lock the experience in 60 FPS, or if you prefer the highest graphics setting, the phone can definitely play in a 30 FPS lock, which is still amazing considering the price. And just a fun fact, there's no need to tinker with joyos or locked 50 FPS like we had with the X4 GT here, and we can see the phone is really being pushed hard here, because in just 5 minutes the phone is already at 40 degrees Celsius. Then within 15 minutes we're up to 44.7 degrees warm, though note that this is the reading of the chip itself and not how it feels on the outside. The vapor chamber cooling system does a great job in dissipating the heat, and on my thermometer I can see only 42.6 degrees on the hottest part of the phone. So yes, it does feel warm, but it's not necessarily burning hot. And I just can't stress enough how impressive this is for a phone running Genshin at maxed out settings, no cooler fan, and it's just 300 bucks. So during the 15 minutes gameplay, we see 7% usage of battery, which is a bit more than Mobile Legends, but we can see the chip also working much harder here. Calculating this out, basically the 5000 mAh battery inside could last you around 3.5 hours of maxed out gameplay. But remember, this is the fastest you can drain the battery, and for daily use the phone easily lasts the whole day with browser and social media use, so don't worry about that. Moving on to Honkai Star Rail now. Here I tried a couple different settings to analyze for you. Firstly, the medium preset 60 FPS, a setting that I usually recommend for most phones, plays at solid locked 60 FPS when exploring the map, dropping only to around 50 FPS during fights, which is where most of the animations take place. The high preset 60 FPS performs not too differently, with 59 FPS locked on the map and around 40-50 FPS during fights. The lowest dip I can see are brief moments of 35 FPS, but that's very few and far in between, and the temperatures hover around 42-43 degrees, which is fine. Finally, we move on to maxing out the game once again at highest preset 60 FPS. We can see that for the most part we do still get 59 FPS when exploring the map, with a bit more dips than high preset, but the fight sequences are actually much more taxing now, as we see an average of 40 FPS and frequent dips to the 30s. This is around the same findings we see in Genshin, where if you want to max out the graphics you have to stay at 30 FPS, but still again that's a crazy result. So after 15 minutes of gameplay, the phone is now at 41 degrees Celsius inside and 40 degrees outside, and the battery usage is actually a bit lower at only 5%, most likely because I've been testing the game with various settings, so it's safe to say it'll use around the same power if you play around the same time with maxed out settings. Last but not least, I tested Call of Duty Warzone, a heavily requested game, and yes, it is very graphically demanding, but the game itself determines the hardware in your phone and presents you the most suitable setting. And on the X6 Pro we only max out at mid preset, whereas with 8 Gen 3 phones like Xiaomi 14 I reviewed before, you can play at high preset instead. But still, I tried the uncapped frame rate to see just how far it can go in this setting. In the best case scenario, with not much going on, the game runs at 80 FPS. Although in much more complex scenes or open spaces with lots of assets, the game actually drops to 60 FPS now. And again, I'm sorry for not being the brightest player in the game here, but my teammates do carry me until the very end, and we can see that during fights the FPS dropped even more to around 40 FPS. Like towards the end of the game, I can see just 34-37 FPS max at around 12 minutes mark. Here, the temperatures also rise as quickly as Genshin, going up to 40 degrees in just 5 minutes, although by 10 minutes mark, the chip only reads 42 degrees and the outside of the phone is actually just 40 degrees warm. So we can see the cooling system works its wonders here. It's always 2 degrees less outside than it is inside, and surprisingly, for just 12 minutes gameplay, we're looking at 3% battery usage, which is quite great. Although if I'm gonna play on daily basis, I'd probably put the game on 60 FPS, even just 30 if you want a more stable experience. Now, if you found the video helpful so far, do consider subscribing because I do gaming focus reviews all the time. But now let's talk about the other important aspects of the phone, which I usually just brush off on gaming phones because they're just not great, and that's the camera. Instead of riding the megapixel race, the X6 Pro sports 64 megapixel OIS camera with an important trait, and that is good colors. Just take a look at these sample shots I took. I think it's going to the direction of the impressive Infinix Note 40 Pro Plus I reviewed here, and that's nothing to scoff at, because the phone are just about the same price, but with far more performance. You get ultra wide camera as well, and this totally caught me off guard, as normally cheap Xiaomi, Redmi, POCO phones always have this pale and processed look to them, so this is a step in the right direction, and I think it's perfectly usable on a daily. As for the videos, I think it's fine, but one thing to note is the slow motion video is far from being as sharp as the Infinix. Just a little tidbit I discovered, but let's check out the sample clips right now, and I'll let you be the judge.
So this is a sample video recording with just purely the optical image stabilization. And now let's turn on the digital state now. So we've turned on the steady video now, which is a combination optical and digital state, and you can see the video crops in a little bit. But let me know what you think. And I'm trying to walk, a little bit stable, but not super crazy, and I'm definitely moving my phone. Okay. And just to have a sample video for the front camera, this is what it looks like, and let me know what you think.
Now, before we end the video, I just wanted to mention I like the minimal and equally similar bezel all around, how the back glass curves on the sides are nice to hold, and the overall design is pretty nice and minimal. This particular model I'm testing is the 12 gigs of RAM with half a terabyte option, and it's UFS 4 too, which is the fast storage used on flagships. This thing really is a crazy bang for the buck. And should I talk about the Xiaomi HyperOS? Well, it's just MIUI, but more fluid on the animations. Just make sure to turn off the annoying notifications and you should be fine. But now that I think of it, maybe after trying a few Android skins, my gripe with HyperOS now is how there's no option for extra dim, as the lowest brightness is still too bright to use at night. I have to use apps like Darker to manage this, although outside the screen does get bright enough. But yeah, some other stuff that you need to know is the dual speakers are great, haptics are nice and tactile, and there's infrared blaster as well to control your TVs and ACs, just no headphone jack nor adapter included in the box, but I've got a great USB-C IEM to review, so stay tuned for that. Hopefully it'll come very soon. So that's pretty much it for the review. Let me know what do you think of the POCO X6 Pro, and please use the affiliate links to help me out. If you're curious how the best chip this year, the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3, can perform, check out my Xiaomi 14 review here, and I'll let YouTube recommend you the second video. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Kenneth, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.